And a one, and a two, and a three. Happy Tuesday. What's up, you beautiful people? And welcome to another wonderful episode of the Daily Dirty 30 here on The Kevin Lee Show. Now, for those of you who do not know what the Daily Dirty 30 is, well, let me explain it to you. The Daily Dirty 30 is where I get to spend 30 minutes Monday through Friday every day telling you exactly how I feel about the things that bothered me most today. Pretty straightforward, right? I think so. All right, so again, as everyone knows, this is the Daily Dirty 30, Daily Dirty 30 here on The Kevin Lee Show. So today, I don't think I'm going to attack just like one thing that's bothering me, because let's face it, there's a lot more than just one thing that's bothering me today. I think I'm going to start with, first and foremost, masks. Now, before you start jumping down my throat and telling me how horrible of a human being I am and how I want everyone to die and I want your grandma to die and everybody else, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying we shouldn't have masks or masks are horrible or no one's allowed to wear them or any of that stuff. I mean, what I'm telling you is it's not necessarily as beneficial for everybody as everyone out there wants you to think it is, right? For instance, today we took my son to his annual physical. I don't know how old he is. He's young. He's like going into first grade, so he's 6. Um, that being said, I was kind of taken aback just slightly when my pediatrician started complaining about masks and how silly she thinks they are, and how she made a comment that basically the least vulnerable people in this country are the ones who are being potentially forced to have to wear them every day next year in school. And I was just like, wait, what? And she said, yeah, the schools are talking about, the state's talking about, the feds are talking about that every single person should, frankly, anyone and everyone who is in school, K through 12, that they should be wearing a mask basically all day. And she thought how ridiculous this was because as a medical professional, she understands that those age people from 6 years old, 5 years old, all the way up to about 18 are literally almost, I don't want to say impossible because that's not true, but highly unlikely to have any serious illnesses or even illnesses at all, let alone complications from COVID-19. So needless to say, I was taken back just a slight bit. Not because that I don't agree with her, because I do. The thing is, it's just refreshing and shocking to see a quote unquote medical professional who will, do the same thing, who say the same thing, even if they think it. Because I know I've talked to a handful of doctors and many nurses who fully agree with what this doctor had mentioned to me today, but they all do it very hush hush, very quiet, saying like, well, I can't say anything publicly, but my God, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I don't agree with this, or I don't agree with that. But here's doctor just, a person I see once a year just telling me, you know what, this is ridiculous. People need it. Maybe the teachers should wear masks all day, but not the students. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good point. Teachers should be wearing the mask all day because if they're the ones who want protection, they're the ones who need it, right? But of course, they can't just be wearing some little silly bandana because that's not going to protect them necessarily from catching the virus, just spreading the virus. So maybe, just maybe, hear me out here, perhaps teachers should be the one wearing these extensive respirators, if you will, things that will actually protect them. I think that would be vital. Now, again, I'm not saying that people shouldn't wear masks. I think some people should, and especially if you're going to be sick, coughing, sneezing, if you're going to be around people who my goodness, excuse me, who are susceptible to not even just coronavirus, but flus and colds and everything else, people who have compromised immune systems, then absolutely you should be wearing a mask, right? But for the everyday people just walking around, no. I mean, obviously everyone's heard the whole spiel about, you're driving around town, all of a sudden you're seeing people in cars by themselves wearing masks and how silly those people are. I think we all agree there. But how about when you're outside? Say you're outside walking your dog. There's no one else around you. Or if they are, they're, 20 feet off. Should you be wearing a mask? No, of course not. But yet many people will still wear masks. You know why? They're nervous about offending people. They're nervous about driving people batty. That's what they're doing. And, again, I feel sorry for those people. But, and again, I'm trying to be nice here, because I have a good amount of friends who absolutely believe that masks are not only a waste of time, but they are completely harmful. And I do grant that there are some things that are potentially harmful. If you're wearing a mask for 10 minutes, you'll probably be fine. But say you're wearing a mask for an hour, 2 hours. Say you're a worker at a grocery store, a cashier, and you're forced to wear a mask 8 hours a day. Is that healthy for you? No. Why? Because you're not expelling all your carbon dioxide. It's kind of getting caught there. You are building up moisture on the inside of your mask. That is a home for breeding bacteria. I mean, we're not even just talking COVID-19 and flus. We're talking other colds, other viruses that are out there, even things that could cause you to get infections and what have you. Just in general, just it's not a good thing. Like I used to work in a hospital for years. I used to work in surgery for years. I had to wear masks all the time. Well, guess what? That mask came off every opportunity we had. Plus, we switched our masks out several times a day. Now, I mean several. I'm talking, I might go through 5 to 10 masks a day in 8 to 10 hour shifts. I mean, that's, 1 an hour, maybe. People just don't understand that masks can be beneficial, but only to a certain extent, at least with Corona. Often everyone's like, well, doctors wear masks all the time. Dentists wear masks all the time. Well, do you know why they're doing it? They're not necessarily doing it to protect themselves. They're doing it to protect you. Because if you have an open wound or open infection, they're afraid that if they have any germs, even normal germs to them, might be harmful to you. Not even bad germs, just any germs. Outside forces inside a compromised immune system can be bad. And that's why doctors and dentists and healthcare professionals will typically wear masks around people who are compromised. That's always been the practice for, not always, but been the practice for decades now, and it should be the practice for those people. In the same way, very similarly, we should probably be treating people with COVID. If you are even concerned that you might be sick, put on a mask. If you were coughing and it's not just from water going down the wrong pipe, put on a mask. If you're going around anyone who's susceptible in any way, shape, or form, put on a mask. These are really simple things to do. Now, another reason why I bring this up is because I just saw that Harvard, of all things, decided that they were going to have online classes only for the entire year, at least for the undergraduates, which is a majority of their students. That's kind of frightening. I mean, it might potentially prove to be a wise decision. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I know things, a year down the road, 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road, and see what kind of fallout there is from things like this. But I can almost tell you, it's probably not going to be the best decision. Because, okay, let's face it. What do we know so far? We know so far that Corona has for overall, all people combined, at minimum, conservatively speaking, a 99.5% survival rates. That's conservatively speaking. If we actually truly knew the infection rate and knew how many people were infected, I mean, there's estimates anywhere between, just in the United States, between 40 and 150 million people. Almost half the population might have been exposed or infected already. If that's the case, that means the death rate is probably 0.000001. But let's say that it's closer to 0.05, so a 0.5%. Again, that's worst case scenario. That means 99.5% of the people walking around are fine. Now, could they get sick? Yes. Could they get ill and have to miss some work? Yes. Could they, be stuck in bed for a few days? Absolutely. Would it suck to have coronavirus and have it full blown. Absolutely. But then another thing, we don't even know what we're dealing with, right? Like everyone speaks of coronavirus like there's one coronavirus, but is there? I've heard reports there's as many as 2 or 3 known strains already. Like they said that the one on the East Coast was not the same as the one on the West Coast. They tested them, they're not the same. So how many strains are there? What are we dealing with? How do we track that? Do we track it? Is it possible? Are we ever going to get a handle on it right now in the next few months, even the next few years? And the reason why I say that, again, I don't want to go off on huge tangents here, but most people don't understand just because something has been a season, 2 seasons, a year, 2 years, 3 years, everyone thinks magically things are gone. Like we're not having these issues anymore. Well, that's not true. Case in point, 2019-2020 flu season from October of last year through March of this year. As always, the CDC releases statistics every week throughout the entire year, or through the entire season. In 2019-2020, which is now just finished, we have the final numbers. Now, they were tracking it every week, but we have the final numbers of infections, deaths, all that kind of stuff. And even those have been skewed by COVID-19 because we don't know who really died from the flu and who died from COVID-19. But I digress. People do not realize, most people don't know, I should say. It's not even that they don't realize, they're just not educated because the common person doesn't know these things. But essentially every year we have influenza A and influenza B, right? And there's not just one strain of each. There's multiple strains of each. And that's why sometimes flu shots are effective and sometimes they're not. But we're trying to guess which one's going to be the prominent strain or strains for each. Because you can't just pack 20 different strains in a single shot of a flu vaccine. It just doesn't work that way. So they try to pick a couple from A and a couple from B and hope that they guess right. Well, every season, influenza A, influenza B will usually have 2 or 3 front runners, which makes sense. This year, influenza A happened to be more infectious, created more hospitalizations, and caused more deaths than influenza B. So whatever strains were influenza A were worse than influenza B. Now, normally, you'll have, for influenza A, if you have just like one, you'll have 2 or 3 strains, but they usually break up like maybe one's like 50%, one's like 30%, one's like 20%, or maybe even closer to even 30-30-30, where it's like split almost even. That's not uncommon at all. This year, influenza A, again, was the more infectious, the more deadly, the more hospitalizations of the two. This year, one strain was responsible for, I think it was 95 or 96% of all known infections, hospitalizations, and deaths. That's extraordinarily high for this type of event. Guess which strain that was? It's called H1N1 PDM09. Do you know why? Because it's the H1N1 pandemic 09 strain, the exact same strain, not a variant, the exact same strain that hit in 09. That was our last pandemic before coronavirus. So we're what, 2009, 2020, 11 years, right? 10 years, 11 years down the road. Surprise, surprise, it's still there. In fact, it was not only still existing, it was literally the most potent flu of the entire country and infected more people, put more people in the hospital, and killed more people than any other flu in the country over a decade down the road. Guess what, people? COVID-19 is probably going to be the same thing. We're going to see it this fall, next year, the following year. Now, maybe it'll kind of disappear and something else will kind of, take charge for a while. Maybe the normal flu will be worse next year or a couple years down the road. But COVID-19, it's probably going to be here for a while. Sorry, just telling you. So we're going to have to learn to work with this because we can't shut down our society and shut down the economy and shut down our schools and shut down everything because, there's a spike here and there's a spike there. There's a hot spot here and there's a hot spot there. Guess what? Perfect example. Okay. Truth in advertising. I'm working on almost halfway through my show. I got to hurry up. Other things I want to talk about, but don't want to get off topic here because it's important for people to understand. Like right now here, like all these numbers, Texas is spiking. Florida's on the rise. All these places are in bad shape, right? Okay. Agreed. Those numbers are real. They're not made up. But truth in advertising. What are those numbers? You see, it is true that there are more, or number one, it is true that there are more infections of corona in those areas caused by, of course, the protesting, the riots, those type of things. So we have that. The numbers are higher. And they also say, well, hospitalizations are higher. In fact, they're higher than they've been in a long time. And ICUs are getting closer and closer to capacity. Oh my God. You hear those things and you're just, oh my God, what are we going to do? Yeah, we have to lock everything down. Well, what they're not telling you is that a majority of those people who are in the hospital, and especially the majority of people in ICU, are not corona cases. In fact, it hasn't spiked at all. The deaths haven't spiked. The ICUs of corona have not spiked, and the hospitalizations are barely even raised to what they were even a couple weeks ago. Then how come we have all these hospitalizations and all our ICUs are filling up? Oh, that's right, because all the people who had spending months and months and months not going to the hospital, not going to the doctors, not getting things checked out, are now going to the hospitals, getting these surgeries, getting these procedures. Guess what? Those things take hospitalization, so those beds start filling up. So when you take the regular coronavirus and put it on top of those numbers, we're now towards capacity. But guess what? They're not all coronas. In fact, the majority of them, not even close of them are. Even the ICUs, people are having complications, people are having problems. Those people are now in ICU, and there are people who are getting sick. Yes, and I do not. I mean, I feel terrible for the people who are getting sick. I hope I don't get it, but I know probably one day I will. Maybe even this season, maybe this year, maybe next year. I know a number of people, and this is another crazy thing about Corona. So I've got friends my age in early 40s or mid 40s or whatever we are now. They have older siblings, and many of them have had siblings who've gotten sick, and some of them got really sick. I'm talking like staying in bed for 3, 4, 5 days before getting out, and then trying to live normal for a couple of days. And a few more days, you feel more closer to normal, and then a few days later, maybe you're pretty much normal again. So we're talking what, almost a week and a half, 2 weeks easily. Then I've got people who are the serious cases where we should be concerned with, like the people who have had not only aged in the sense that they're in their 70s or even 80s. We're talking people who have had terrible disease and compromised immune systems. I mean, people who have had cancer and had parts of their lungs removed, and people who are really the people are we should be the ones looking out for, who have gotten coronavirus, and guess what? They're fine. They're walking around like nothing's happened. It doesn't make any sense. What is causing this? Now, I know there's people out there like Brett Weinstein and people like that who want to blame it on man-made or man-manipulated, I should say, viruses, and maybe there's truth to that. I mean, these guys have more experience in that area. I'm not quite ready to say, hey, these people. I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. I don't think it was released on purpose. I think if there was any manipulation in a lab and someone was doing research and some shit got out, stuff got out, and they tried to hide it and they tried to cover it up, and guess what? They didn't do a very good job of it, did they? I think in worst case, I think that's what happened. And of course, China would lie about it because they're trying to save their butt. They're trying to make everyone think that either they didn't do anything, or if they did, it wasn't their fault, or what have you. Now, on the flip side of that, we have the Trump administration. Has Trump handled this well? No. He's dropped the ball time and time again. Now, I don't necessarily blame him as someone who's worked on high levels of pandemics in the past. I understand protocols and normal procedures, and I understand that when there was some early testing available from overseas before we had developed our own, it's commonplace for the CDC to recommend that we do not use theirs. We make our own. And it might sound terrible, and it kind of is, in my opinion. I didn't like it years ago, and it's still kind of the way things are done now. But people have to understand, this is the way it's done. So this is the way it was recommended to him by people like Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci and the CDC. I wouldn't have done that, but that's me. But again, there's many opportunities they could have had to make things right and to be more transparent and to get this information out. And maybe they're being manipulated. I don't know. But Trump's administration has not done well. Do I think Biden would have done any better? Probably not. Or whoever's actually going to be president if Biden wins, because let's face it, he's not going to be president, at least not for a very long time. Maybe a few weeks, few months, maybe. Yeah. So anyways, I think we're done with the corona, right? God, we're almost 2/3 of the way through this. I have so many things. Okay. You know what? I'm going to make this short, because I was going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I want people to understand that corona sucks, right? No one wants to get it. No one wants anyone else to get it. I don't think there's anyone or should be anyone in any side of any line or any party or any group pointing one hand at another saying you people are horrible, you people are terrible, you people are ruining our economy, people are ruining our country, people are killing our people. No one wants to see anyone die. Well, no normal person wants to see anyone die. I can't say there's anybody. I'm sure I've known some really twisted people out there who have thought such things, but people don't typically want other people to die or suffer or anything. So keep that in mind next time you have a conversation with someone and they're starting to complain about something you disagree with. It's fine to state your opinion. It's fine to state your facts or whatever you have, your truth, whatever we're using nowadays. Yeah. But keep that in mind. That person across from you is not your enemy, basically. They're not evil. They're not anything of the sort. They're either scared or confused or tired or what have you. So just keep that in mind when you discuss this stuff with other people. Now, boy, there's a whole talk I want to get on race, but and our reaction to everything that's been happening lately. But I think I'm going to save that for a different time. Not like I really have anything to complain about it, but I wouldn't mind touching base and talking about it because people are handling this all wrong. Sorry, so excited I can't even stop myself from screwing up. So people typically, we'll get into that as far as the race comes tomorrow and the next day probably, because it's not like it's going to go away anytime soon. But there are so many things to talk about. We have like perfect example, stimuluses. I am not against stimulus, right? I'm a libertarian. I believe people should, provide for themselves or take care of their own. I'm not necessarily like, the government should be giving everyone money. That being said, there are times like we had initially with all the businesses shutting down, people were going to be out of work. Not everyone could qualify for unemployment. People needed money to survive. Well, let's fast forward now a few months. And guess what? The economy hasn't picked all that much back up. Many different areas are shutting back down. And there's some talk now about having another stimulus. And I think it's actually a wise decision. Now, this is the problem. You got people on the left and Democrats who want to take this as an opportunity to push forward another 20 different agendas and set the route for they'll make the groundwork for a UBI, universal basic income, and all these things. And of course, people on the right aren't going to want that. I find myself in the middle, and I don't want that for our country because once we get into that, once we dip our feet in that pool, we're gonna jump right in and never get out. So don't want that. But it's like, I see people argue about it, and I see people manipulate the system, right? I mean, people ask me because technically, I had left my job shortly before all this happened because I had prospected for a couple other jobs plus a couple other paths I wanted to go down, and I had no reason not to. I had some money saved up. I thought we'd be good, and of course, shit hit the fan. Now, technically, I probably could have applied for unemployment and probably would have gotten it because they were giving it to everybody. And I could have gotten a lot of money. Part of me thinks to myself, I should have done that. I should have gotten the money. But another part of me is glad that I didn't because, there's a lot of headaches that could happen from it. Who knows what's going to happen at the end of the year, next year? Who knows when the state's going to be like, well, you know what? We reviewed your case and we don't think you should have had that, so we want our money back. That can happen. People don't realize just because they give it to you doesn't mean they won't want it back, first off. Second off, I figured someone else might need the money more than me, and if I took some of that money, maybe other people wouldn't have that money available to them. I still have to scrape around a little bit to make ends meet, but I'm doing it. Working some side jobs and, selling some graphics and doing some web design. So it's getting there. Putting food on the table, keeping a roof over our head. That's really all that matters. But that being said, how long can I do that for? I need to make some serious money. And right now there aren't jobs to go to. Even though things have been opening up, they're only opening up a little bit. Instead of opening the door, just kind of creaking open, kind of peeking out to see who's there. So there aren't many opportunities out there. So I got to do something. I know I'm not the only one. There's lots of people in my shoes. People I know and people I don't know. People all across this country, even all across the globe. It's a really crappy, screwy time. And I guess what I'm just saying is just make sure that you're looking out for your own. Like, say you have a brother or sister or cousin that you don't see very often, don't talk to her very often, but maybe they might be struggling even before this. And you have some extra money in your pocket, you should probably reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Need any help? Now, a lot of people would be like, well, what if I don't like them? Well, I'll say you don't like them. Still do it anyways. Still family, right? Someone's got to take care of them. And everyone's like, well, we shouldn't be doing that. Of course we should be doing that. We should always be doing that. I mean, God, when we were kids, when I was a little kid, it was uncommon to have a lot of my friends' families have grandparents living with them. And that had been the norm for the last century before then. Now, grandma and grandpa start having a senior moment. You start looking for a nursing home to stick them in. It's terrible that this is where we've come to in our existence, where we look at people and just figure they're an inconvenience and they're a pain in the ass, and I don't want to have to deal with it. So, someone else's problem, even though they're your family, they're your parents, your siblings, your children, your grandparents, your cousins, your whatever they might be. So maybe, just maybe, if you find yourself in a still comfortable position and you have plenty of cash sitting around and you got people that might need some help, maybe you should check in on them. That's all I'm saying. I don't even have much money and I've done that. So, I'm not telling you have to do that. I would never tell you what you have to do with your money, but just something to think about. Let's see, we're getting at the end here. So in closing, what do I want to talk about in closing? So many things, and there's just such little time. I don't want to squeeze everything. I feel like I'm going to be cheating it if I do. But back on my technology rant, let's just finish that for the next couple minutes. If you saw the show at all yesterday, you knew there was a lot of issues. And boy, were there even more issues than I thought after I watched it. What happened is my audio got screwed up beforehand. I was trying to mess around with it, and guess what? I unplugged something. When I plugged it back in, it changed in my software what was routing my audio, and then all of a sudden I was using like a speakerphone type audio because it was coming through my camera and not my microphone, which is right in front of me. So sorry about that. But it's just so funny how not only dependent we've become on technology, but how like anything, the more things improve or get better or whatever, all of a sudden things get screwed up. Because like cars, back in the 60s, 70s, even early 80s, you bought a car, you got a carburetor, you know how to fix it, you know what to do with it in the middle of winter when it got stuck. Many people could work on these things. Now, cars are so complicated, most technicians plug it in, they're like, oh, I don't even know what the hell that is. Because there's just so many sensors, so many things. It's just the more we improve, the more we get screwed. Same thing happens with computers. Right now, I've got a computer that's running whatever, and I was running my audio through some channel strips and into my mixer and doing all these things. Too many places for things to go wrong. So if you can learn anything from me in technology, if you're going to do something, simplify. In fact, even this wasn't working today. I had to like replug around because all of a sudden my USB wasn't working in one of my ports. So I think this might be maybe the last time I do it on this computer. Next time I might actually go to my other computer, if it's working, and try it through there and use a different program to actually broadcast and do everything, and different types of cameras and things like that. So I won't have this room behind me if I do that and all that, but who cares? It's just a thing. Things change, right? I think so. Well, anyways, on that note, I think I'm going to end this. So everybody, happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is doing well. If not, have a drink and, hope things improve for you. So I will see you guys later. Bye.